All right, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Solid Foundation Israelite Academy 2020. I am your host, Shabar Judah Israel, and on today, I'm going to be bringing you guys a wonderful lesson. Please share this video with family and friends. Guys, please do that if you will. You can support me. Just head over to YouTube, type in Solid Foundation Israelite Academy. You should see this logo in the back, guys, right here. Or simply, you can type in Shabar Israel. And that's ShabarIsrael, Shabar Israel. And that's on YouTube. And just like you can subscribe to my channel if you will and help support the movement, guys. We need you out there, okay? Also, you can follow me on Twitter, and that's Shabar Israel, Twitter. And last but not least, guys, you know where you can find me. Facebook Live. We about to get it in on today. And we want to say Tawab, Yawam, which is good day. Brothers and sisters, Akin Yawam. We're going to do this through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jesus Christ. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the lesson. Guys, the topic of discussion is going to be, I will be explaining Gentiles in the New Testament, okay? I'm going to be explaining this Gentiles in general, and I will also be explaining Gentiles in the New Testament. So you need to know what a Gentile is. You need to know just, you just need to know the analytics on Gentiles when it comes down to the Bible. All right, when it comes down to the Old Testament or the New Testament, you need to know basically the Gentiles, what's going on. So I'm going to explain that. All right, guys. So let's get into the lesson. Okay, so here we go. I was waiting for at least one brother or sister to come on into the room, but we don't have any guests right now. So I'm just going to kick it off, guys, and I'll see you brothers and sisters when you come on in, all right? So here we go. Now, the first book, chapter, and verse. The first book, chapter, and verse in the Bible, I forgot to mention that. You're going to need a Holy Bible, guys. King James Holy Bible. I forgot to mention that you will need a composition book to take notes. And last but not least, you will need the Apocrypha. And I need to get that. I definitely need to get that. You will need the Apocrypha book. Hey, baby. Hey, bring me my Apocrypha book. Get the Apocrypha right quick. Sorry, guys. My lovely wife, she's going to bring me my Apocrypha. I thought I had it with me, but fortunately, I don't. So she's going to get that and we can get into the lesson. So once again, the topic of discussion is who are the Gentiles in the New Testament and who are the Gentiles in general. I will be explaining the Gentiles, dealing with the Old Testament and the New Testament. Who are these Gentiles? Okay, so this is what I was telling you guys you're going to need. You're going to need a Apocrypha because I'm going into this as well. So let's go into the Bible right quick. I don't have long, guys, but I'm going to do what's necessary. So let's go ahead and go into the Bible. So this is 2 Peter chapter 3 in the Bible. We're going to 2 Peter chapter 3. 2 Peter chapter 3. And I will begin with verse 15. So 2 Peter 3 and 15. All right. Now, I'm going to put the camera on the verse so you guys can see it, if that's okay. All right, so here we go. 2 Peter 3 and 15. Share the video, guys. All right, so 2 Peter 3 and 15. I believe, is it 2 Peter 3 and 15? Yes. So, an account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul also according to the wisdom given unto him had written unto you. So this is talking about our brother Paul. Paul was from the tribe of Benjamin, guys. Paul, the apostle. It's talking about Paul. 2 Peter 3 and 16. Now watch this. As also in all his epistles, mean letters, and all Paul's letters, speaking unto them of things in which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable basically wrestle, as they do also the other scriptures into their own destruction. So, guys, the reason why I'm bringing out, listen to me. Okay, wait a minute. So the reason why I'm bringing out 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 and verse 16, because it tells you that Paul, according to the wisdom that was given to him, that his letters concerning his epistles, his letters, the letters of Paul. What is the letters of Paul? I'm going to show you the letters of Paul. Because it said in all his epistles that there were some things, listen guys, there were some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable, they wrestle with. So let me show you Paul's epistles. Okay, so these are the letters of Paul, and they are listed in the New Testament. And the reason why I'm bringing this out, because don't think you're going to jump in the New Testament and go to reading and gain some inner over and understanding. It don't work like that, guys. You should know how to read the Bible already. I did several lessons on this. So watch this. I'm going to type in Paul's letters. Paul's letters. Now, so let's get some images of that, because Paul wrote letters, and I'm going to show you in the Bible what these letters are. So let's see, can I get a good one? Okay. Alright, so let's take a look at the New Testament. So we're going to look at the New Testament, and I'm going to show you all Paul's letters. Matter of fact, I analyzed it in my Bible so you guys can clearly see it. Alright, now watch this. This is in my Bible, right? So I'm going to Paul's letters. So when you look at the books of the New Testament, right, we know that the New Testament starts off with the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then after that, it talks about the actions of the apostles after the Messiah had left the earth and returned to his Father. And then it goes into, you guessed it, it goes into the epistles of Paul. So what you're seeing here, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and then it's 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews. These right here, these are the epistles of Paul, Paul's letters. You see, it says the epistles of Paul. So guys, please, from Romans to Hebrews, these are the epistles of Paul. Once again, from the book of Romans to Hebrews, these are what you call the letters of Paul. Now, like I told you, Romans on down to Hebrews, these are what you would call the epistles of Paul, the letters of Paul. And he was writing these letters. Listen to me, guys. He was writing these letters to the church. Paul was writing these letters to the church. He was writing letters to the church. And I'm going to show you this. So Paul's letters were to the churches. He was writing letters to the churches. Now, guys, I told you I was going to explain who are the Gentiles in the New Testament. Okay? So we know that Paul was writing letters to the church. We know that thus far. But was Paul writing letters to anybody? Was Paul writing letters to any and everybody? That's the question. Was Paul writing letters to any and everybody? We're going to get into that. Just hold your horses. So, we know thus far, Paul wrote letters from Romans to Hebrews. He wrote letters in the Bible like Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippi, Colossians, 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, and Hebrews. These are the letters of Paul, right? Now, what did it just tell you? In 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 15 and 16. What did it just tell you about Paul's letters? Let me go over it again. Watch this. 2 Peter 3 and 15 in the New Testament. It says, an account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul. You see that? Peter is talking about our beloved brother Paul. Peter was an Israelite. Keep that in mind. Peter was from the tribe of Judah. He was a Jew. Keep that in mind. And also Paul, which was the brother of Peter, he was the brother of Peter. Paul was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. And Peter tells you about our beloved brother Paul, also according to wisdom given unto him that he had written into, he had written to the churches. Now we're going to explain what these churches that he was writing to. 2 Peter 3 and 16. What did it say about Paul's letters? What did it say about Paul's letters? Paul's letters to the churches. What did it say in 2 Peter 3 and 16? It says, as also in all his epistles, that means letters, in all Paul's letters, speaking in them of these things, and with some of Paul's letters, some things was hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable, they wrestle, as they do also the other scriptures into their own destruction. Now, the reason why I brought that out, because in 2 Peter 3 and 16, Peter is telling you that if you're going to think, if Peter is literally telling you that if you're going to pick up the book of Romans and think you just finna go into that and go to reading and understand that, you sadly mistaken. Because he told you that in all, it says in some of Paul's epistles, it says some of the things was hard to be understood. Like when you read the book of Romans, when you read 1st and 2nd Corinthians, when you read Galatians, when you read the book of Ephesus, the book of Ephesians, you understand? Philippians, Colossians. When you're reading these letters in the New Testament, these are Paul's letters. These books are Paul's letters. In fact, Paul wrote 75% of the New Testament. So when you're reading Romans, like if you're reading from Romans to Hebrews, guess what, guys? There are some things from Romans to Hebrews, there are some things that's hard to be understood. There are some things in this man's letters which is hard to be understood, which they, like your pastors, your ministers, which they, the evangelists, which they are unlearned, and which they that try to go into these letters of Paul, they try to understand them, they are unlearned, unstable, and they wrestle with them, as they do also other scriptures of Paul, into their own destruction. And the reason why I brought this out, because I'm going to show you in the New Testament that when Paul wrote these letters to the churches, he was writing these letters to the churches. He was writing these letters to the churches. Keep that in mind. He was writing these letters to the churches. Now, when you read in the Bible, you're going to come across the Bible explaining the table of nations. Especially like in the beginning, when you read the book of Genesis, when you start progressing throughout the book of Genesis, it speaks of the genealogies of nations that was created. For instance, I'm going to show you some of them. Okay, so when you read throughout, especially Genesis, because Genesis talks about the origin of time. So when you start reading the book of Genesis, okay, and you come across these table of nations like this. Let me show you guys. You see it says table of nations here. These are 18 nations in the earth, guys. You have the nation of Israel today, which consists of 12 tribes. Okay? The 12 tribes today, let's get that. The 12 tribes today, I'm going to minimize this. Let me go ahead and minimize that. Yeah, let me minimize that. So you read about the table of nations back in the book of Genesis. It's 18 to be exact. Number 1 being the Israelites. So within the nation of Israel, there are 12 tribes. Now, those 12 tribes today, guys, is, as you can see, I'm going to blow it up for you. Those 12 tribes today. Those 12 tribes today. For instance, when it starts off with, Judah. You can see right there, Judah today are the so-called American Negroes. You see what I'm saying? Then you have Benjamin. Benjamin today are the so-called West Indians of Jamaica. And then you have the Haitians. Where's Haiti? Right here. The Haitians right here. And the Levites. They are the Levites today. So when you're reading about these 12 tribes of Israel that came about, you got to know who the 12 tribes are today to identify who are the Israelites. And here's a list of all the 12 tribes today, concerning the areas they would be in the last days, concerning Genesis, the 49th chapter. And I'm not getting into all that, but I'm showing you right here the Seminole Indians of the Everglades of Florida, down south. They are the Reubenites, the Dominican Republic. They are the Simeonites. The Gadites, they are the Native Americans. The Zebulonites, Panamanians to Guatemala, or what you may say, Panamanians to the Colombians. You see what I'm saying? The Issacharites, the so-called Mexicans. Naphtali, Argentina to Chile. You know what I'm saying? Basically, that would be southern Brazil. Then you have Asher, northern Brazil, Brazil to Venezuela. You have Manasseh, which is the Cubanos, the Cubans. Ephraim, Puerto Rico. You understand? So these are the 12 tribes in today's time. So when you're reading about the 12 tribes, the chosen people of the nation of Israel, these are the 12 tribes in today's time, guys. All right? I'm just showing you this. Now, so when we go back to the 18 table of nations, and when you start to begin to learn about these nations, going back into the book of Genesis, how they came about, and it talks about the Israelites. I just showed you who are the Israelites in modern times today. Basically, this consists of blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, and Native Americans. The people, to make a long story short, who are the Israelites today? The Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans, to make a long story short. And they are all listed here. They are all listed here, guys. They are all listed here, as you can see. We are the chosen seed today. Blacks, so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. If you are Negroid and ending in descent, yes, by default, you are a descendant of Israel. Okay? So we can see that right here. So when we go back to the table of nations, you can see within Israel there are 12 tribes. And I just showed you all the 12 tribes in modern times today. Okay? You can read about this in Genesis, the 49th chapter. It tells you about the geographical locations. Now, so I just showed you who are the 12 tribes. And then from 2 to 18, you have other nations. The Edomites. The Bible speaks of the Edomites. The Edomites today are the so-called Caucasians. White people. You see what I'm saying? Europeans. They are the Edomites. You see, the Elamites, the East Indians of today, of India. The Persians, for lack of a better term. Then you have Ashur, which is Assyrians. Then you have Syria, which is Aram. You see, the Arabs today are the Ishmaelites, the descendants of Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son. And then you have the Chinese people today. They are Moabites. You know, Moabite, and the Japanese, Ammonites. Moab and Ammon, they were the sons of Noah. I'm sorry. Not the sons of Noah. Salakia, forgive me for that. Moab and Ammon, Chinese and Japanese, they were not the sons of Noah, but they were the sons of Lot. All right, the sons of Lot. All right, sorry for that mistake. And as we progress on, you will get to see the Ethiopians, you understand? Which are the Cushites. They are the Babylonians. Basically, Babylon today is located in Iraq. You understand? Then you have the Egyptians, Northeast Africans, Mizraim. The Libyans of North Africa, Put. The South Africans, which were the Canaanites. The Turkish people, which was Gomer. The Russians, which are Magog, Greeks, Javan. Germans, Ashkenaz, Spanish, and it goes all the way down. The Spaniards, those are the Spaniards, the conquistadors that conquered the Taino Indians. You see what I'm saying? And then Cyprus, these are Rome. That's Rome. That's Italy. You see what I'm saying? So out of all these 18 table of nations, guys, remember what I said earlier. Don't forget it. Remember what I said earlier. Now, we just went over all those 18 nations, and we should know who they are today in modern times. So, remember, guys, what I said earlier. Paul, he was writing letters to who? Who was Paul writing letters to? Let's go back to it. Let's go back to the display. I told you earlier, Kamaya Yasharal, Wanda Smith, glad you guys can be part of this wonderful lesson. I told you earlier that Paul was writing letters to who? Paul was writing letters to the churches. Paul was writing letters to the churches. Paul's letters was to the church. All right? So, let's go back to the table of nations. Let's go back to the table of nations. Keep in mind that Paul's letters was to the who? The church. Now, out of the 18 table of nations, out of all these nationality of people today, out of all these 18 nationality of people, what is the only nation in the Bible that was known as the church? Out of all these table of nations, what nation in the Bible was only classified as the church? The nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is the only nation in the Bible that is known to be the church. And I'm going to show you guys. So this is a red flag to let you know that Paul was sending letters out to the dispersed Israelites in various locations. All right? Because Israel is the church, the only church that the Bible speaks of. So when you see here Paul's letters to the churches, it had to be to the Israelites, and that is the dispersed Israelites, because they were the only nation in the Bible that was classified to be the church. And I'm going to show you. So let's get into that. Now, let's go to more book, chapter, and verses in the Bible. Okay? So let's go to, where is Israel called the church in the Bible? Where is Israel identified as the church in the Bible? Let's get that. Okay? Now, let's see. I'm going into the book of Acts. So follow me, if you will, into the book of Acts. That's right after, Acts is right after the Gospel John. So, yeah, follow me in the book of Acts, and I'm going to prove it to you guys. All right? That the only nation in the Bible that was classified to be the church is Israel. That's the true church. Israel is the true church. So if Paul was writing letters to the church, then they had to be Israelites. And I'm going to show you this, guys. Hands down, easily. I'm going to show you this. Okay? So, let's take a look at, let me get the book, let me get the chapter and the verse. Let me get the chapter and the verse for you guys. Yeah, we're going to have a nice time tonight. Nice time tonight. A nice time tonight, guys. I want to show you this. So, yeah, let me get that. It's in the book of Acts. Thank you guys for being part of this wonderful lesson. And let's take a look at Acts 7 and 38. Acts 7 and 38. The book of Acts in the New Testament, right after the Gospel of John. Book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 38. Right? So, let me pull it up on the computer so you guys can see this for yourselves. Okay? So, I'm going to start up a little bit. I'm going to skip up a little bit on the verse though. So, I'm going to actually start reading from Acts 7:35. So follow me. Acts 7:35. This Moses whom they refuse, saying, who made thee a ruler and a judge? The same did God send to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel which appeared to him in the bush. Okay, because we should know that history. Acts 7:36. He brought them out. Now, who was the them? That's talking about the Israelites. He brought Moses. He brought them out after that he had showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years. Because the only nation that was in the wilderness for 40 years, if you know your history, the only nation that was in the wilderness for 40 years was number one. Out of all these nations was number one. They was the nation, the Israelites was in the wilderness for 40 years because they mumbled and they complained against the Most High. They was in the wilderness for 40 years, guys. The only nation that the Bible speaks of, Israel, in the wilderness for 40 years. So we know who was in the wilderness. You see? Acts 7:37. This is that Moses, which said unto the children of Israel, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. Him shall you hear. And that prophet was talking about Yahweh Shai, who the world called Jesus Christ. Now, as we progress to go down, listen up, because here is the golden book, chapter, and verse. Because I told you guys I was going to explain who are the true church. The Israelites are the true church. You cannot talk about a church without talking about the nation of Israel, because they are the true church. So if you don't believe me, see, because a church is not a building, guys. A church is not some type of auditorium, some type of civic center, you know what I'm saying? Some type of gymnasium. That's not a church, man. The true church that the Bible speaks of is the nation of Israel. The modern day blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, and Native Americans. And guess what? Here it is. I'm going to give it to you. Acts 7:38. So get ready, guys. Here it is. Acts 7:38. This is he that was in the church. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness. Now, who was in the wilderness for 40 years? Who was in the wilderness for 40 years? Let's go back to the table of nations. Let's go back to the table of nations. Now, out of all these nationality of people on the earth, what nation only was in the wilderness for 40 years? The nation of Israel. I showed you who are the Israelites today, guys. The Israelites today are the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and the Native Americans. The people are Negroid and ending in ancestry. They are the Israelites today. These are the Israelites today. Collectively, all together, the so-called niggers, Hispanics, and Native Americans. They are the Israelites today. You see? And they the ones that make up the 12 tribes. So when the Bible speaks about the church, it's speaking about the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. So when we go back to Acts 7 and 38, and it says, this is he that was in the church in the wilderness. Okay, who was that church that was in the wilderness for 40 days? Salah. Who was that church was in the wilderness for 40 years? What church was in the wilderness? Was it a building? Was it some building in the wilderness for 40 years? Was it some auditorium in the wilderness for 40 years? No. The people that was in the wilderness for 40 years, they were the Israelites. They the church. Israel is the church. See that? So this is he that was in the church in the wilderness, which the angel which spake unto him in Mount Sinai. And with our fathers is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who received the lively oracles, who are the only people of the Bible that received the lively oracles. Who are the only people did the Most High give the lively oracles to? Acts 7 and 38. This is Acts in the New Testament, the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 38. So Acts 7:38 talks about a church in the wilderness. And it also says that that same church received the lively oracles. Who was that church that received the lively oracles? It was the nation of Israel that was given the law, statutes, and commandments by God, because the Heavenly Father, the God of Israel, who you call Jehovah, he was the only one that gave the lively oracles to the nation of Israel. He did not give the lively oracles to the other nations. You see, let me show you again. Acts 7 and 38. That church that was in the wilderness, that was Israel. They were the ones that received the lively oracles. The lively oracles meaning the law, statutes, and the commandments that God had given them. You see that? So that church in the wilderness is talking about the Israelites who received the lively oracles. This is Acts 7 and 38. They are the only nation that received the lively oracles. So that church in the wilderness is Israel. Now I know what you may be saying, because a lot of you may not be believing this. I don't think Israel was the only nation that was given the laws, statutes, and commandments. Well, guess what? I'm going to show you guys. This is Psalms 78 verse 5. Psalms 78 verse 5. Psalms 78 verse 5. So let's see who was the only people that was given these lively oracles. Psalms 78 verse 5. Let's go. Here we go. You be the judge. Psalms 78 verse 5 in the Old Testament. For he established a testimony in Jacob. Who is the he? He's talking about the God of Israel, the Lord. He established a testimony in Jacob. Another name for Jacob is Israel. And you're going to see it. And appointed a law in Israel. So the Heavenly Father, who you call Jehovah, who we know as Yahweh, the Heavenly Father, it literally tells you in Psalm 78 verse 5 that God appointed Jacob. He established the testimony in Jacob, also known as Israel, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And he appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they should make them known to their children. So it tells you in Psalm 78 and 5 that God established a testimony in Israel, and he gave the only nation that he gave the law, statutes, and commandments to was the nation of Israel, because he appointed a law in Israel. He did not appoint a law in any other nation, guys. God did not appoint a law in any other nation. The only nation out of all these table of nations on the earth that received the lively oracles was the nation of Israel, and that is the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today. You were the only nation that was given the policies of God. All these other nations, they were not given the commandments of God. God can care less about these other nations. That's why you are a special people, Israel. That's why Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6 says, for thou art a special people. Why? Because we was the only nation that was given the holy oracles. You see, all these other nations from 2 to 18, from number 2 down to 18, the white man, the East Indians, the Syrians, the Arabs, the Chinese, Japanese, Ethiopians, Egyptians, North Africans, South Africans, the people of Turkey, Russians, Greeks, Germans, the people of Spain, and Rome. From 2 to 18, they were not given the holy oracles. They was not given the law. They were not given the lively oracles. They was not given the law. The only nation that was given the law by God was the nation of Israel. So when you go back into Acts, when you go back into Acts chapter 7 and 38, who was that church? Who were the church in the wilderness? Who were the church stuck in the wilderness 40 years? Eating manna. They was eating manna. And I'm going to show you who were the church in the wilderness for 40 years, eating manna and quail. Who was the church in the wilderness also who received the lively oracles? That church right there, that church was the Israelites. That church was Israel. That church was the blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. Out of all these other nations, that was the church that was in the wilderness. And that church today, which consists of 12 tribes, that church today are you so-called Negroes, which are the Judites. You so-called Mexicans, which are Issachar, Naphtali, the rest of you. All you are the church. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that makes up the 12 tribes of Israel. You are the church. You are the church. You are the church. So when you see things like this, Paul's letters to the churches, guess who Paul was writing his letters to? If Paul wrote letters to the churches, who were those churches? If Paul wrote letters to the churches, who were those churches? The Israelites. Paul was writing letters to the dispersed Israelites that did not know they was Israelites, who was calling themselves, what they was calling themselves. Let's see what let's see who Paul letters was to. Since you guys, those of you out there that may not understand, enter and understand. Now, showed you guys. Now, Paul the apostle, wrote the book of Romans. So he was writing to dispersed Israelites in Rome, because we know that. He had to be. Because if Paul's letters was to the churches, then we know that the church is Israel, according to what? Acts 7 and 38. Because they were the church in the wilderness. So if Paul was writing letters to the church, we showed you once again, if Paul was writing letters to the churches, and we showed you in Acts 7 and 38 that, that church that was in the wilderness, that same church that was in the wilderness, they received the lively oracles. And then we showed you right here in Psalms 78 and 5 that the lively oracles is talking about the law. So that the lively oracles that the church received, that was talking about Jacob, also known as Israel, because the Most High appointed the law in Israel. And so that was the lively oracles that they received. And that also was the church in the wilderness. So when it talks about Paul's letters to the church, then guess what? He was writing to the Israelites. He was writing to the Israelites that didn't know they was Israelites. You see what I'm saying? But when you go to church, they got you thinking that Paul was writing letters to all nations. Let me show you something, guys. You're going to learn tonight. Oh, yes, you're going to learn tonight. They got you thinking when you go to church, because your wicked ass pastor, your pig eating pastor that won't stop eating that goddamn pork, your wicked ass pork chop pastor, pulpit pimp, when you go to church, guess what he keep telling you? Oh, Paul wrote letters to all nations. He tells you this right here. Paul was writing letters to all these nations. Paul sent letters to all the nations. Paul was writing to all these people. No, Paul, let me tell you something. Paul was not writing to all those people. Paul, guys, I'm going to show you this. Paul was writing letters to the Israelite foreigners that was calling themselves Gentiles. Okay, guys? We know they had to be Israelites because his letters was to the church. We showed you who was the church according to the Bible. So when you go in the New Testament, and you see Romans, Paul wrote a letter to the Israelites in Rome that was calling themselves Romans. When you see 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Paul wrote letters to the city of Corinth, which was located in Greece, to the Israelites that was calling themselves Corinthians. When you see Galatians, Paul wrote letters in Galatia that's located in Asia Minor to the Israelites down in Galatia that didn't know they was Israelites. They was calling themselves Galatians. When you see Ephesians, Paul wrote letters to Ephesus, which is located in Greece, to the Israelites that was calling themselves Ephesians. They didn't know they was Israelites. When you see Philippi, I believe was located in Greece as well. Paul wrote letters to Philippi, to the Israelites down there calling themselves Philippians. When you see Colossians, Paul wrote letters down in Colossae, I believe, which is in Asia Minor, Israelites down there that didn't know they was Israelites calling themselves Colossians. When you see 1st and Thessalonians, Paul wrote letters to Thessalonica, which is located in Greece, to the Israelites that was down there that didn't know they was Israelites. They was calling themselves Thessalonians. When you see 1st and 2nd Timothy, Paul wrote letters to Timothy. Paul wrote letters to Timothy because Timothy became the first bishop of the church of Ephesus, which is located in Greece. So 1st and 2nd Timothy, Paul was writing to Timothy, which was an Israelite. He became the first bishop of Ephesus, which is located in Greece. And you had Israelites in Greece that didn't know they was Israelites, that was calling themselves Grecians. So when the Bible in the New Testament speaks about the Grecians, they were dispersed Israelites. All right? Let's continue on. All right? And also in Titus, Paul wrote letters. Philemon, Hebrew, all these letters that Paul wrote was to the dispersed Israelites that was calling themselves Romans. They was calling themselves Greeks, Italians. You see what I'm saying? They was calling themselves that, but they was Israelites, but they was just lost sheep. They had strayed away from the covenants. Just like you today, brothers and sisters, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today. You call yourselves Americans. Because some of you don't know you the Israelites. You're an Israelite by nation. You're an Israelite biologically. You're an Israelite by birth. But you grew up in foreign lands, calling yourselves these derogatory names, giving yourselves these false labels. So you grew up in America calling yourselves Americans. You're not American, you just have American citizenship, but by nation you are an Israelite. Your nationality is Israel, but you niggas grew up in America calling yourself Americans. So if Paul was to rewrite the Bible today, he would write a letter to the Americans. You see what I'm saying? Which would be the church in America. Just like Paul wrote to the church in Rome. That church in Rome was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, Greece. That church in Corinth, Greece would be the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church in Galatia. That church in Galatia was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church of Ephesus. The church in Ephesus was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church in Philippi. The church that is Philippians, the church in Philippi was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church of Colossae, which was Colossians. The church of Colossae was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church in Thessalonica, which was Greece, which would call themselves Thessalonians. They was the Israelites. Paul wrote to the church. You see what I'm saying, guys? So if Paul wrote to any church, that church had to be the nation of Israel. And how do we know that? By using Acts, the 7th chapter, the 38th verse. Acts 7 and 38. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness. What church was in the wilderness? Israel. What church received the lively oracles? The Israelites. So watch this. I'm going to show you that Israel, the church, was in the wilderness. They was the church that was in the wilderness. All right? I'll show you guys right quick. I got to hurry up because my phone is about to die out. All right? So let me show you guys. And watch this. Show you guys right quick. Talks about the Israelites in the wilderness. Okay? So let's look at, because I'm trying to prove that Israel, they were the church in the wilderness. Because they were the only nation in the wilderness for 40 years, guys. I mean, that shouldn't be too hard, but I'll show you. Let's look at okay, so here we go. Okay, so let's look at the book of Exodus. Let's look at the book of Exodus, and we would take a look at the book. We are in the book of Exodus. Okay, and I'm just proving it to you guys. I already proved it, but I'm just showing you that they was in the wilderness. I'll just show you right quick. Wait a minute. Watch this. Watch this, guys. Let's see what book. Let's see which chapter and verse I want to pick. Okay, so now Exodus 13 and 8. Exodus 13 and 18. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness. Who was the people? The Israelites. Through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. And the children of Israel went up, went up and harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Exodus 13 and 20. You can see that one. And they took their journey from Succoth and encamped in Ephraim in the edge of the wilderness. You see what I'm saying? Exodus 14:3 as well. For Pharaoh was saying to the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land of the wilderness. The children of Israel, they were entangled in the land of the wilderness. That's Exodus 14 and 3. So we can see who was entangled in the wilderness. They was in the wilderness 40 years. The children of Israel was in the wilderness 40 years. So when it goes back to Acts 7 and 38, and it says the church that was in the wilderness, we know that was the Israelites that was in the wilderness for 40 years. They was known as the church. They received the lively oracles. So when Paul wrote letters to the churches, guess who they were? They were the Israelites. They were just called Israelite foreigners. Guys, let me go get my charger. Let me go get my charger right quick, guys. Hold on just a second. My phone is dying. Let me go get the charger. Y'all hold on just a second. I'll be right back. All right, guys. I am back. I'm sorry. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry for the inconvenience, guys. I'm back. I had to run and go get my charger. I don't want to lose this footage, guys. I don't want to lose it. Please take notes. I told you the Bible is only for the children of Israel. From Genesis to Revelation, the Israelites can only be saved. No other nation. Salvation is only for Israel. And this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to prove it to you guys. You see what I'm saying? So, like when your pastor, or like you might hear a minister, or you might hear some type of evangelist, or whatever it may be. You might hear whoever. You might hear your pastor telling you that salvation is for everybody. But that's not. And what they do, they try to go in the New Testament and they try to pull this verse right here. So guys, I'm gonna show you the verse that they try to pull. We already showed you who was in the wilderness, man. We already showed you guys who was in the wilderness. You want to see it again? We already showed you. We looked at Acts chapter 7 verse 38. The church was in the wilderness, was Israel. They received the lively oracles as well. Then we gave you Exodus 14:3 to back it up. Once again, we gave you Exodus 14:3. For Pharaoh would say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land of the wilderness. So who was in the wilderness? The children of Israel. Who was in the wilderness? The children of Israel. Exodus 14:3. Who was in the wilderness? The children of Israel. One more time. Acts 7:38. The church in the wilderness. The church in the wilderness. So who is the true church? If a church, because Acts 7:38 says that there was a church in the wilderness. Who was that church in the wilderness? Who was that church that received the lively oracles? Who was that church? Who were the churches that Paul was writing letters to? You guessed it, guys. The blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are the 12 tribes of Israel today. The church is Israel. There is only one true church, and that is the Israelite nation. That's the only true church. From 2 to 18, they can kick rocks. The Most High did not choose them. The Most High did not set the lively oracles upon them. The Most High is concerned about the church, and you know who that is? You know who that is? His chosen people. They the church. So guess what, guys? Guess what? A church is not a building. A church is not an auditorium. The church, the true church that the Bible speaks of, is the children of Israel. And if Paul was writing letters to the church, guess who he was writing to? The children of Israel. If Paul was writing letters to the church, we know it had to be to the Israelite nation, the 12 tribes. So Paul wasn't writing no letters to the white man. Paul wasn't writing no letters to the Edomites. Paul wasn't writing no letters to the Elamites, which are the East Indians. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Asherites, which are the Assyrians. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Aramites. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Ishmaelites, which are the Arabs. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Moabites, which are the Chinese. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Ammonites, which are the Japanese. Paul wasn't writing letters to the Cushites, the Babylonians, which are the Ethiopians. Paul letters didn't go to the Egyptians, which is Mithraim. Paul letters didn't go to the Libyans, which are North Africans. Paul letters didn't go to the South Africans, which are Canaanites. Paul letters didn't go from Turkey all the way down to Cyprus, which is Rome. Paul didn't write letters to these nations. From 2 to 18, guess what? From 2 to 18, Paul did not write letters to those people. Paul was writing letters to the lost sheep, to the dispersed house of Israel that was calling themselves Romans, Greeks, and everything else because they didn't know who they were. Just like a lot of you Israelites, that they don't know who you are. We'll have to write letters to y'all to wake y'all up. Come on. Simple. Easy. You put the precepts together. Let me show you the crap they give to you in church. They want to try to get to your feelings. They want you to get all emotional. Let me show you this. Let me show you this right here. This is nonsense. Let me show you this crap right here. This is sickening. This is so disgusting. Look at this bull crap. See, the church gonna have you believing this. The church gonna have you believing that the gospel is for all nations. See, that's what the church will have you believing. The church will have you believing. The church will have you believing that the gospel is for all nations. That all nations. Now, this is something seriously wrong with this picture because first and foremost, that's the goddamn devil in the middle of the picture, okay? that blonde hair, blue-eyed, red-skinned devil. You goddamn devils. You Edomites. The white man. He's the devil that the Bible speaks of. And we know that the Messiah, Jesus Christ, who we know as Yahweh, we know that he wasn't a pale skin. First and foremost, let's get that straight. Let's get that straight. The Messiah was not a pale skin. The Messiah was not a Caucasian. The Messiah was not a white man. The Messiah was not an Edomite. Okay? The Messiah was an Israelite. So let's give you the true biblical description of the Messiah based upon the image. And I got to explain this, guys. The true Messiah of the Bible. The true Messiah. The Messiah hairs upon his head that was white like wool. And the Messiah pigment that was like brass as it burned in the furnace. That's the true biblical description of the Messiah. Okay? The true biblical description of the Messiah. Not that blonde hair, not that blonde hair, blue-eyed, red-skinned bastard. All right? So let's get that straight. Because, see, Christianity gonna have you believing that Paul wrote letters to all nations. Christianity gonna have you believing that Paul wrote letters to everybody. He was just sending letters out. He was writing to the Chinese. He was writing letters to the Japanese. He was writing letters to the Arabs, the East Indians. He was writing letters to the Africans. The church gonna have you believing, listen once again, hear me out. The church gonna have you believing that Paul's letters was just written for all nations. They gonna have you believing that Paul's letter was Paul just wrote to everybody. They gonna have you believing. But that's not the case. Let's see who Paul's letters was for. Because I already know, I can really cut this video off right now. You understand? I can really just cut this video off right now, guys. Let me set this up. Guys, because I can really just end the video now. I already showed you who the church is according to the Bible. And that same church was in the wilderness, which are the Israelites, and Paul wrote letters to the church. But I can't cut it off there. I got to still explain because I know a lot of you may want me to go more further. Oh my God. So to get a good understanding of the New Testament. Guys, you need to get a little history on the people that Paul was teaching. Because Paul was teaching Israelites that was calling themselves Gentiles. Okay, see, let me explain. The Israelites Paul was teaching in the New Testament, they was known as Gentiles because they had been on the Greek and Roman influence for over 900 to 1,000 years. You see? And you need to know this history. So this is very important to get the proper understanding of the Word of God. So, once again, the letters that Paul sent out to the people, they were Israelites, but they was calling themselves Gentiles. Like they was calling themselves Grecians and Romans and things like that. But they was Israelites by nation, but they didn't know they was Israel because they had strayed away from the covenants. They became lost sheep. So let me show you something for instance. Let's go into, a good one is Acts 6 and 1. So let's go into the book of Acts, chapter 6 and 1. I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Acts 6 and 1. Show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Acts 6 and 1. Here it is. And I'm going to explain. Watch this. Just watch this. I'm going to prove to you that these Gentiles in the New Testament that Paul was teaching was Israelites. But they were just calling themselves, Gentiles, foreigners. You know what I'm saying? That's all the word Gentile. See, Gentile comes from the Latin word gentilis, which means foreigner. Or you can say stranger, because stranger comes from the Latin word extraneous, which means the same thing. So when you're talking about Gentiles, you're just talking about foreigners. You see what I'm saying? Which comes from the Latin word gentilis. You see what I'm saying, guys? So let's go to Acts 6:1. I'm going to prove to you that the people that Paul wrote letters to was not all nations, because they have you believing that in the church. They have you believing that, oh, the gospel is for all nations, and Paul wrote letters to all nations. Paul didn't just send letters out to the Israelite. He wrote letters to all nations. Paul wrote to the Greeks. Paul wrote to the... See, let me show you. See, the church gonna teach you this. See, these are biological Greeks. When I say biological Greeks, these are Greeks by blood. Paul didn't write to the Greeks by blood here. Paul didn't write to the Greeks by blood here. Paul did not write to the Romans, which is Cyprus, the Italians. Paul didn't write to them by blood. Or any other of these heathen nations from 2 to 18. The Chinese, Japanese, all these heathen nations from 2 to 18 is by blood. These are heathens, Gentiles by default. Paul did not write to them. Paul wrote to the Israelite foreigners that was following 2 to 18 customs. So you had some of the Israelite tribes that had went off from the covenants, and they started following the Gentiles from 2 to 18. They started following their customs and traditions. They wanted to be just like them. You see what I'm saying? And so they started calling themselves Romans and Greeks and stuff, because you had Israelites that strayed away from the covenants, and they went off and started following 2 to 18 customs and philosophies, wanting to be like them. You get what I'm saying, guys? You get what I'm saying? So now watch this. I'm going to show you. This is Acts 6:1, like I said. Acts chapter 6, verse 1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows was neglected in daily ministration. So we can see in Acts 6:1, murmuring broke out, a controversy broke out, an uproar broke out, strife and contention. You know what I'm saying? A quarreling broke out in Acts 6:1. An altercation broke out in Acts 6:1. Between who? In Acts 6:1. Who was this quarreling among? Who was quarreling in Acts 6:1? Watch this. This murmuring that broke out was between the Grecians that was against the Hebrews. When you go to church, your wicked ass pastor, he gonna tell you, oh, that was Grecians arguing against the Hebrews. That was Grecians, white people, in terms of the actual Grecians by blood. But this is not, these Grecians here, these are not the biological Grecians, like the descendants of, you see what I'm saying, like Edomite Grecians. These are not white people Grecians, like Edomite Grecians. These are Israelites, guys, that was calling themselves Grecians, that was arguing, that was murmuring against the Jews. And I'm gonna show you this. So just click in tools, so you won't know, so you can see for yourself in Acts 6:1. This Grecian right here ain't talking about white people Grecians. These are Israelites that was calling themselves Grecians because they wanted to be like the biological actual Grecians. Now, when you go into this, I have no reason to lie to you guys. When you go down, it says there were murmuring against the Grecians, as you can see here. So when you go down, it says there was murmuring against, there was murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, right? So when you see Grecians, you go over here, because we know the New Testament was written in what language? Greek. So when you go over here, it says G1675. And I would play it. Okay, guys?
Strong's G 1675. Hellenistes. Hellenistes.
So you can see right here, Grecians, as it says Grecians, this is Greek 1675. Grecians in the Greek is Hellenistes. That's how you pronounce that. So let's click into it and see who were these Grecians. Now watch this. We scroll down. It says a Hellenist. Now it says one who imitates the manners. Guys, do you see this? Do you see this? It says one who imitates the manners and customs. They imitate the manners and customs. They impersonate. They copy. They imitate the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks. And they use also the Greek tongue. They speak in the Greek language. It says one who imitates manners and customs. Who was the ones that was imitating the manners and customs in the worship of the Greeks? Who was the ones wanting to be like the Greeks? Who was the ones wanting to be like the Greeks? The Israelites, because you had a lot of Israelites, guys. Listen, you had a lot of Israelites that strayed from the covenants. You had a lot of Israelites that stopped keeping the commandments. And they went off. And they started following the manners, tradition, and customs of the other nations. They wanted to be like them so bad, they started calling themselves Greeks. Like we want to follow the customs of America. We want to be like America so goddamn bad. We talking about we Americans. You understand? But we Israelites. So you had Israelites. That's just like an Israelite, right? That's just like me being an Israelite. I want to be Chinese so bad. I want to be. Let me show you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me show you what I'm talking about. That's just like me being an Israelite. I know I'm an Israelite, so I'm from the nation of Israel because I'm an Israelite. Let's say I wasn't happy with my nation. I wasn't happy with my heritage. I wasn't happy with my God. I wasn't happy with my laws, statutes, and commandments. I didn't want to be an Israelite. Even though I was an Israelite by birth, an Israelite by blood. But I didn't want to be an Israelite. Guess who I want to be like? Let's say I wanted to be like a Moabite. I wanted to be like a Moabite, which are the Chinese today. And I wanted to be like a goddamn Moabite so bad. Guess what I started calling myself? I started calling myself Moab. So guess what? When my brothers and sisters would come to me and tell me, you need to get back to your nation, which is Israel, I would tell my brothers and sisters, I'm a Moabite. So guess what? I want to be a goddamn Moabite so bad. Guess what I started doing? I started learning the Moabite language. I started learning Chinese. I started worshiping the Moabite gods. I started worshiping Buddha. You know what I'm saying? I get into the culture. I started cooking Moabite food. I started learning all the philosophies, customs, manners, and traditions of the Moabites. And to the point where you can't even tell me I'm an Israelite no more. Because I don't practice their customs, their manners, their traditions, their philosophies for so long that, damn it, I just call myself a Moabite. However, even though by blood I'm an Israelite. And that's exactly what is going on in the New Testament. You had Israelites in the New Testament that wanted to be like Greeks so bad they was calling themselves Grecians. You had Israelite in the New Testament that wanted to be like Romans so bad they wanted to be like Rome so bad, the actual Romans, they was calling themselves Romans. They were imitating. Listen, guys, look. They were imitating the manners and customs and worship of the Greeks and the Romans. And they used the Greek tongue, and they also spoke in Latin. Used in the New Testament, these were Jews born in foreign lands, and they were speaking Greek. These in the New Testament were Jews born in foreign lands, and they were speaking Greek. In the New Testament, these was Jews born in foreign lands, and they were speaking the Greek and Latin language, and they wanted to be like these people. So when you go back in Acts 6:1, when you go back into the book of Acts chapter 6:1, and it tells you And it tells you that there was murmuring and complaining about, it was murmuring of the Grecians that was against the Hebrews. These was Israelites, Hellenists. These was Hellenists. These was Israelites that was following the Greek customs and traditions. And they had a problem with their own people, which were the Hebrews. These was Israelites, Uncle Tom niggas, Uncle Toms and Auntie Toms. These was Israelites that was following the Greek customs, and they wanted to be like the Greeks so bad, they started calling themselves Grecians, and they had a problem with their own people they was against the Hebrews. They was against their own people. That's why Paul had to write letters to these churches, which is Israel. That's why he had to write letters, because he was trying to settle this dispute. You feel me? He was trying to return the lost sheep back to their heritage in their nation, because they was out and about worshiping Greek and Roman gods. You had scattered Israelites, dispersed Israelites that was out and about worshiping the Greek gods, worshiping Roman gods, speaking Greek language, speaking the Italian language. You understand? Doing all their customs, doing all their philosophies and manners and traditions. You had our brothers and sisters that was lost. They didn't know who they were. Just like a lot of you niggas today. You lost doing all the philosophies, the traditions, the manners, and the customs of America. Want to live the American dream when you are an Israelite. We try to tell you that, but you keep telling us, no, I'm an American. Same damn thing. Paul was writing letters to his people. You see what I'm saying, guys? You know, this is a long breakdown. I'm just trying to give you what's necessary, man. That's why I told you, man, when I started out, I gave you 2 Peter 3 and 16. When I first started out, I gave you that because it was telling you how Paul's letters was hard to be understood. Now I'm going to show you. Now let's take the book of Romans, for instance, because Paul wrote the book of Romans. Let's go through that, for instance. I'm going to show you. So we know that Paul wrote a letter which is known as the book of Romans to the church. Who was the church? The Israelite. So watch this. Just to show you guys how to manipulate the book, chapter, and verses to get over, inner, and understanding. So when we go into the book of Romans, I'm going to show you. Wait a minute, guys. Please, guys. So here go my Bible, right? I'm flipping, okay? Now I want you to see this. I want you to see this. So when we go into the book of Romans, when we go into that book of Romans in the New Testament, Paul wrote a letter to the church in Rome. Now who were the church? According to Acts 7:38, Israel is the church. You understand? So Paul would write a letter to the church in Rome because you had Israelites that was in Rome wanting to be like the goddamn Romans. You had Israelites in Rome that wanted to be like the actual biological Romans. They was praying to these Roman gods. They was worshiping Zeus. They was worshiping Athena, Apollo, Mercury. They were worshiping all these false gods and idols. Last but not least, speaking the Roman tongue. You understand? Last but not least, wouldn't even step up to their own nationality because they preferred to be called Romans. You get what I'm saying? And how do we know this? Because I'm going to show you. Listen. Let me show you. Let me show you a trick. Let me show you a trick. When you read Romans 1:1, it says, Paul, a servant of Yahushua, Hamashiach Yahushua, who they call Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated into the gospel of God. Romans 1 verse 2, which he had promised afore by his prophets in the Holy Scriptures. Romans 1 and 3. Listen, concerning his son, Hamashiach Yahushua, who they call Jesus Christ, our Lord, you know, our master, our rabbi, which was made of the seed of David according to the flesh. Listen to me. Romans 1 and 4. And declared to be the Son of God with power according to the Spirit of holiness by the resurrection from the dead. Romans 1 and 5. By whom we have received grace and apostleship for obedience to faith among all nations for his name. Listen up closely, guys. Here it is. Listen up. Here it is. We're getting close to it. Romans 1 and 6. Among whom are ye also the call of Hamashiach Yahushua, Jesus Christ. Here we go, guys. Listen. Romans chapter 1 verse 7 gonna tell you who are those people in Rome that Paul wrote this letter to. Watch this. Romans 1 and 7. To all that be in Rome, beloved of God. Who was the only nation in the Bible that was beloved of God? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Out of all the 18 table of nations, who were the only nation in the Bible that was beloved of God, and God separated? He picked them out and gave them the law, statutes, and the commandments. And he called them the children of who? The children of Israel. They was the only nation, and still is today. They are the only nation that is beloved of God. So when you go back in Romans 1 and 7, and it says to all that be in Rome, to all that be in Rome was beloved of God. So who you think they are? To all that be in Rome that was beloved of God, called to be saints. Now that's another thing. Romans 1 and 7 says there was ones in Rome that was beloved of God. Who was beloved of God? The Israelites, called to be saints. Who are the saints of the Bible? Who are the only nation in the Bible that is called saints? Who are the only nation in the Bible that is called saints? The Israelites, guys. They are the only. Watch, I'm going to show you. The Israelites, watch this. Psalms 50 and 5. I'm going to show you this. Please, get to know this. Psalms 50 and 5. The only nation in the Bible that was ever called saints is the Israelites, man. I'm going to show you this one. I'm going to show you two of them. Psalms 50 and 5. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. Who was the only nation in the Bible that made a covenant with the Lord by sacrifice? That's the nation of Israel. So we know the saints are the Israelites. Don't worry about it. Let me show you another one. Psalms 148 verse 13. Here's another one. Psalms 148 verse 13. This is how you know the book of Romans was written to Israelites that was dispersed in Rome. Psalms 148:13. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for his name alone is excellent. His glory is above the earth and the heaven. Psalms 148:14. He also exalted the horn of his people. Who is his people? Let's find out. The praise of all his saints. Now who is the saints? Even of the children of Israel. Psalms 148:14. So the saints is the children of Israel. So when you go back, guys, when you go back to Romans 1 verse 7 and Romans 1 and 7, and it says to all that be in Rome, beloved of God, that's the Israelites. Called to be saints, that's the Israelites. According to the precepts that I just gave you. So when Paul wrote this letter, he was not writing to these cracker ass Romans. He was not writing to the actual biological white Romans, the Edomites. He wasn't writing to them. He was writing to the Israelites that were dispersed in Rome, calling themselves Romans when biologically they was Israelites. This is why Christ said this right here. Let me show you. This is why Christ said this right here. You see what I'm saying? So the Bible is not for all. The gospel is not for all nations. This is why Christ said this right here. Yahweh Shai. What is that? Matthew 10 and 18, I believe. Yeah. Is that Matthew 8? Let's see what it is. Let's see. I'll get it right quick. When it say the Son of Man came to save the law. The Son of Man came to save the what he said. The Son of Man came to save the lost. Wait a minute. Let me get that right quick, guys. The lost is talking about the Israelites. Let me see. Where is that at? He said he came to save the lost. I believe it's Matthew 10 and 5. Matthew 10 and 5, I believe. Let's check out Matthew 10 and 5. Guys, I'm not going to hold you long, man. I'm about to get off. I promise. Matthew 10 and 5. You see, I want to read this, man. Well, no, I want to give another one. Matthew 18 and 11. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. I got a lot to cover. Matthew 18 and 11. I'm sorry. Matthew 18 and 11. So I'm just giving you key points, guys. I'm trying to give you key points. Matthew 18 and 11. Now watch this. Matthew 18 and 11. For the Son of Man is come to save that which was lost. So who was lost? Because the Son of Man is talking about Jesus Christ, who we know as Yahweh Shai. So for the Messiah Christ, he came to save which was lost. And that's Matthew 18 and 11. So who was lost? Who was lost? Who was lost? A lot of Israelite brothers and sisters, they had strayed away from the covenants. They was lost. They was known as the lost sheep. And guess what? They were the same ones that were calling themselves Romans and Grecians and Italians and everything else. And Paul had to write these letters out to them to wake them up. He had to write a letter. He sent letters to the church. We already showed you who the church is according to Acts 7 and 38. That was in the wilderness. That was Israel. So the Son of Man, according to Matthew 18 and 11, the Son of Man came to say who was lost. So who was lost? Watch this. We'll find out. Matthew 15, 24. We'll find out who was lost. Matthew 15, 24. Let's find out who was lost. Matthew 15, 24. Here we go. This is what the Messiah said. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to click on red letter here so you can see the red letters of the Messiah speaking. So I just clicked on red letter right there so you guys can see it. So what did the Messiah say in Matthew 15, 24? But he answered and said, the Messiah, he answered and said, I am not sent but into the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 15, 24. So the Messiah said, I wasn't sent for all the other nations. You see what I'm saying? I wasn't sent for everybody. I wasn't sent for everybody. Like Christianity tell you. Because Christianity, they going to lie to you and show you this. See, Christianity teach you about this. Christ said out of his own mouth that he wasn't sent for everybody. So what the hell is this? This is of the devil. This is blasphemy. And this is not Jesus Christ. This bastard in the middle is not Jesus Christ. You understand? That's not Yahweh Shai. The real Messiah, according to the Bible, he said out of his own mouth, he said, I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So here's the deal. Check this out. The Messiah said he's not sent only but into the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's what the Messiah said. He said, I'm not sent only but into the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So it seems like we have something going on here. It seems like it's two messiahs or something. You understand? Because see, Yahweh Shai, he was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But this fictitious devil, blue-eyed, red-skinned, blonde-haired bastard, the image of the beast, the devil, the Edomites, the white man that the Bible speaks of. You are the devil, you Edomites. You understand? This fake-ass Christ. You understand? Yes, it's to Christ today. It's to Christ today. This ain't the real one, according to the Bible, because we know he said he was only sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But they gave you this one in Christianity, the slave man, the slave master's religion. He gave you this and told you that no, he came for everybody. No, Jesus came for everybody. Yeah, this devil ass did. This devil ass fictitious Caesar A. Borgia, he may came for everybody. He probably came for all nations. But guess what? He probably came for all nations. This the one you've been learning about in Christianity, the white man's religion. He probably came for all nations, but not him. He probably came for all nations, but not Yahweh Shai. You see what I'm saying? That's why, guys, you got to know what's going on, man. So Paul is not writing letters to all nations because the Messiah didn't come to all nations. The Messiah said in Matthew 15:24, he was not sent but only into the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So you be the judge. Let me show you this. Because another Jesus Christ have come on the scene. And I'm going to show you what the Bible says about this. That's why you know it's a bunch of bullshit. Look at this. This is 2 Corinthians 11 verse 4. 2 Corinthians 11 verse 4. For if he that cometh and preach another Jesus. The Bible is telling you that someone will come along and preach about another Jesus. Somebody will come along and preach another Jesus. If he that cometh and preacheth another Jesus to whom we have not preached, because we didn't preach about this. Let me show you. This is the another Jesus that came along. This is another Jesus. We got two on today. But Yahushua, his name, the true name of the Messiah is Yahushua because there's no J's in the Hebrew alphabet. But we got another devil-ass Jesus that came. You Edomites, you bastards. You came along to give us this bullshit and got us believing, oh, that he died for all nations, that Jesus died for all nations. Yeah, this crackle-ass image did right here. This devil-ass bastard did right here. He died for all nations, but I got something to tell you. Not him on the right-hand side. This is the real Messiah, Hamashiach Yahushua, who the Bible speaks of. And he only came for the 12 tribes of Israel. I'm going to say it again. He only came for the 12 tribes of Israel. He only came for the Negroes, the Mexicans, the Argentinians, the Haitians, the Brazilians, the Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, Dominican Republic, Seminole Indians, Native American Indians, Panamanians, and Colombians. You are the 12 tribes of Israel. Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, and Native Americans. And guess what? Yahushua, the black Messiah, he came only for the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. But they cooked up, they created another one. They created another one. They created another one. They created another one. They created another Jesus and gave you the bullshit. They created another one. They created another one. They created another one. And that's what the gospel says. 2 Corinthians 11 verse 4. For he that come and preaches another Jesus, they gave you another Jesus whom we have not preached. They gave you another Jesus who ye receive another spirit. See that? Or if you receive another spirit, that's talking about a religion. Another spirit which we have not received. You understand? Or another gospel. This comes along with another gospel. This is totally, see, he telling you in 2 Corinthians 11 verse 4. Another Jesus came with another spirit, which is a false religion. And also what came along with that? What else came along with that? Another gospel. Another gospel came along with that. And that gospel today. Another gospel came along with that, and that's Christianity. You understand? So they'll have you believing in the bullshit. They'll have you believing, oh, Jesus came and died for everybody. Yeah, this devil-ass Jesus did right here. The fake one did. But not Yahushua. Yahushua only died for the 12 tribes. And guess what? We know that Paul, he was an apostle. He was an Israelite from the same nation of Yahushua, who you call Jesus Christ. And you think he just writing letters to everybody? No, Paul was writing letters to his brethren and his sisters. And they got you believing in church, this man writing letters for everybody. I told you, only salvation is of the Israelites, man. People don't know what's going on. I'm going to show you something else. People don't know what's going on in these churches. They don't understand the Bible. They don't know what's going on. Now, if I'm going to just give you a rundown, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Let me see. I got to cut to the chase. I got to get out of here, guys. If you know history about the nation of Israel, I got to get out of here, guys. I really got to get out of here. You got to know the history, man. I can't teach y'all all this in one night. I'm sorry, guys. I can't teach you all this in one night. You got to know the history, man. You got to know when you dealing with the history of Israel, okay? You had history of the Israelites that were scattered, you know what I'm saying? Like, especially when you go into 1 Kings, the 11th chapter. When you go in 1 Kings, the 11th chapter, it talks about how Israel became a separate nation, you understand? Because Israel consists of 12 tribes, but when you read 1 Kings 11, you can see how King Solomon, when he committed iniquity, he went off and married those foreign women, those heathen women. He caused the nation of Israel to be split. And you know, that's what's going on. And that's 1 Kings, the 11th chapter. You have to read that, because I can't cover all this stuff, guys. I would like to be here all night. I got to get up out of here for the sake of time. So, like I said, when you read 1 Kings chapter 11, it tells you how, you know, the nation of Israel, they became two separate kingdoms. You understand? You had the kingdom of Samaria and the kingdom of Judah. You understand? Like right here. So you see right here, these are the 12 tribes. When you read 1 Kings, the 11th chapter, 1 Kings, the 11th chapter tells you how the 12 tribes were split up. You understand? They became two nations. For instance, like, let me put the pen right here to separate this thing. So when you read 1 Kings, the 11th chapter, it tells you how Israel was split up. You had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, which was known as the southern kingdom, which was known as Judah. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi was known as Judah. And then you had Ephraim all the way down to Naphtali. From Ephraim all the way down to Naphtali, they was known as Samaria, northern Israel. So after the split, after the 12 tribes became split up, you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, which were the Jews, the southern kingdom of Israel, which was Judah. And then you had Ephraim, and all the way down to Naphtali, which was Samaria, northern kingdom of Israel. So you had the northern and southern kingdom of Israel after the split. And after the split, Israel went in several captivities. Just giving you a rundown. Israel went in captivity by the Assyrians. Israel went in captivity by the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. You see what I'm saying? So after that split, Israel went in several captivities. And you had Israelites that was living in, you know, Rome, which was Italy. You had Israelites who were living in Corinth, which was Greece. You had Israelites was living in Philippi, Ephesus, Greece again, Galatia, Asia Minor, Thessalonica, Greece. So you had Israelites living in Thessalonica, which was Greece. You had Israelites living in Rome, which was Italy. You had Israelites living in Asia Minor. You had Israelites living in parts of Africa. You had Israelites was everywhere, because after that split, after the 12 tribes became two separate kingdoms, you had all these captivities that took place, and Israel was scattered out. So you had Israelites that was living in the lands that Paul sent letters to. And Paul sent letters to say to the Israelites that was living in these foreign lands that was calling themselves Gentiles. Paul sent these letters to them to awaken them back to their nationality, to let them know that they wasn't Greeks and they wasn't Romans. You see what I'm saying? They wasn't Italians. They wasn't who they were saying they were. You know what I'm saying? But by nation, they was Israelites. They just needed to be awakened up. So Paul had love for his brothers to send letters to these churches, you know who that is, to wake them up, to return them back to their heritage, that's not their nationality and their God. You understand? And keeping these commandments. That's all what's going on, guys. You know what I'm saying? But if you want to say that Paul was sending letters to non-Israelites, if you want to say that Paul was sending letters to non-Israelites, that don't add up, because Paul was not sending letters to non-Israelites. Because let me tell you something. It's a misconception, man, because they would say this right here. Another thing, the pastor would bring this up right here. Let me show you. He would say, well, we'll explain this then. Because, see right here, in Matthew 28:19, it says, go therefore and make disciples of people of all nations. So this is what the Messiah tells, his apostles to do. And I'm going to get that. What was that? That's Matthew 28:19. I will explain that. and a little bit more, and I will close out. So Matthew 28:19. Matthew 28:19. You understand? So yes, he did say that, but let's explain that. You see what I'm saying? So let's go back up, and yeah, let's see. And let's click on the red letter so you can see that the Messiah is speaking. Clicking on the red letter. See, Matthew 28, the Messiah told his disciples, he said, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Ghost." You see what I'm saying? So he tells his disciples to go and teach all nations. But what happened? What happened to Israel? See, you gotta know the history though. You see what I'm saying? Why would he tell his disciples to go and teach all nations? Because I'm gonna show you what happened. I'm gonna show you what happened. For instance, when he told them to teach all nations, watch this. This is Luke 21:21. I'm gonna show you what happened. You guys gotta know the history. Luke. So what happened to Israel? If the Messiah told his disciples to go out and teach all nations, what happened to Israel? Watch this. What happened? I'm going to show you. Watch this. Luke 21. Here we go. Because I'm going to just show you. I'm going to cut straight to the chase. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. This is talking about the Israelites. Because they fell by the edge of the sword because the Romans came in during 70 AD and killed a lot of Israelites up. So Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations. So it's telling you right there. You see what I'm saying? The ones that in Judea, you can see Luke 21:21. It talks about Jews that was in Judea. Because that's what Judea means. Judea means Judah. Judea goes back to the Greek and it means Judah. So you had Jews that were living in Judah. Now who are the Jews? They are Israelites. See what I'm saying? So in Luke 21:24, the Messiah was telling the Israelites that it was going to come an appointed time that the Romans was going to come in and seize Jerusalem, kill up Israelites, and they was going to fall by the edge of the sword. And they shall be led away captive into what? They should be led away captive into all nations. So you was going to have Israelites that were scattered out in all nations. You see what I'm saying? And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And those are the biological Gentiles, which are the modern day Israelis that took our land over. So in Luke 21:24, the Messiah was telling the Israelites that they was going to be led away captive into all nations. This is exactly why he was telling his disciples to do what? This is why he was telling his disciples to go therefore and teach all nations, because he knew that 70 AD was coming. He knew that 70 AD was coming, and he knew the Romans was coming in, to destroy Jerusalem and scatter the Israelites. Another thing you can look at, guys, for the sake of time, I'm skipping through this. Another thing you can look at James 1:1, man. You can look at James 1:1. James 1:1. You can look at that. James 1:1. This is James. James 1:1. A servant of God and the Lord, Yahweh Shai, who they call Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which were scattered abroad. The 12 tribes were scattered. James 1:1. The 12 tribes were scattered. The 12 tribes were scattered. So when the Messiah told when the Messiah told the disciples to go out and preach the gospel into all nations, he wasn't talking about go out and preach the gospel to non-Israelite nations. You understand? But we got to do that today. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to tell you why we got to go out and make disciples of all nations. We got to do that. I'm going to tell you why we got to do that. Today, yes. You ask me, yes, we got to go out and we got to teach everybody now. I'm going to tell you why we got to teach everybody now. Because Israel is still mingling their seed. See, the Israelites, they don't supposed to be marrying Gentile women and heathen women. Like if you're an Israelite, if you're a black, Hispanic, and Native American, you don't supposed to be marrying white women. You don't supposed to be marrying Chinese women. You don't supposed to be marrying Japanese, African women, Arab women, East Indian women. You see what I'm saying? You don't supposed to be marrying those women if you're an Israelite, because God is against interracial marriage. But since Israel have went out and mingled their seed among about every damn nation you can think of, we don't know who Israelites and we don't know who heathens, because Israel have mingled their seed. See, so this is why, okay, and let me show you this. Let me show you the confusion of faces. Because Israelites have mingled their seed. So we don't know who Gentiles or who Israelites. Because you can be looking at a Gentile, you can be looking at an Israelite and he look like a Gentile. Or you can be looking at a Gentile and he look like an Israelite. So we can't afford to just call people out on sight. We can't judge them by the appearance of their skin color. We can't judge them by the way they look because confusing the faces. Because they can be an Israelite that look like a heathen, that look like a Gentile. You see what I'm saying? Let me get you guys this. Because the Most High told Israel not to intermingle with other nations. But they did that after they were split up. You see what I'm saying? Watch this. Let me get this right here in Daniel's. You see what I'm saying? Watch this. O Lord, righteousness belonging to thee, but unto us the confusion of faces. Daniel said that it was going to be confusion of faces among the Israelites. See what I'm saying? The confusion of faces as this day, to this day. Because guess what? You got a lot of white people walking around here and they Israelites. You see what I'm saying? So it's not about your skin color, really. It's about bloodline. It's not about your skin color. It's about bloodline. But it's hard as hell to determine who come out of the nation of Israel. Because Israel have mingled their seed with all these other nations. Because you black, Hispanic, and Native American man, you love sleeping with white women. You love having sex and children from white women. And many other women out there, you love doing that. So now your kids coming out looking like crackers, and now your kids coming out looking like Chinese and Japanese. Now it's hard to tell who is Israel and who is not. So we can't afford to just, pick somebody out on sight. We just go out and do like the Messiah said. You understand? Because the confusion of faces. So you know what we do? We just go out and we teach. We try to make disciples of all nations because the spirit bears witness, man. You gonna know if they're Israelite or not. You don't gotta go out because what we do, a good thing you can do too. A good thing you can do, go up to a person and say, what's your nationality? What's your father's nationality? That's a good way how you can tell, where they basically their ancestral lineage. Because when we out and about, let's just say, for instance, a white man step up. We say, what's your nationality? He said, what do you mean? We say, what's your father's nationality? And the white man say, oh, my father is an African American, but my mother is a black woman. I mean, what if the white man what does that white man say? My father's an African American, but my mother is a white woman. Then we know that white man is an Israelite, you understand? Because the seed come through the father. But what if another white man come up? We say, what's your nationality? What's your dad's nationality? What is your dad's nationality? He said, well, my dad's nationality, he would be, my dad is a Russian. Then we know that white man, he an Edomite. You see what I'm saying? But just by looking at someone, we can't detect who is who. So we got to go out and do this right here. We got to go out and make disciples, go therefore and make disciples of people of all nations, because we don't know who Israel today, man. The only way we can determine that is the spirit that bears witness. You'll know if they're a crack or not. You'll know their spirit. You'll know if they're a real Chinese or a real Japanese or a real African or a real Arab or a real white man, real white woman. You'll know that by their spirit, because their spirit bears witness. You see what I'm saying? Okay, let me get that. Let me see. Let me get that right quick. Wait a minute, guys. I'm going to show you, because the spirit bears witness, man. Try to get that right quick. Spirit bears. Let me see. Okay, this is Romans 8:16. So when you out and about, it says, see Romans 8:16. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. So, what if you out and about? What if you out and you saying that this white man come up right here, right? Because we know that salvation is only of the Israelites. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Once again, these are the 12 tribes of Israel. Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, and Native Americans. Salvation is only for the 12 tribes of Israel, which is blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. But let's just say this white man came up while we was out teaching. Because we know who the white people are today. The white people are who? Who are the white people? The so-called white men are the Edomites. And the Edomites are not Israelites. Therefore, they can't be saved. So when we out teaching, what if this white man came up? You know what I'm saying? He want to know, can he be saved? He want to know, he want to know if he eligible. He wants to know if he's eligible for salvation. So this white man comes up, right? He want to know, can he be saved? The first thing we gonna do, we gonna say, well, what's your father's nationality? We ask him what his father's nationality. We say, what's your father's nationality? He says, well, you know, my father is a Native American. My father is a Native American, and my mother is German. Well, guess what? He's an Israelite because the seed come through the father. See what I'm saying? So guess what? We ask people that because then we'll know that this brother right here, he's an Israelite because his father is a Native American. And we know who the Native Americans are. Who are the Native Americans? The Native Americans are the North American Indians. The Native Americans are the tribe of Gad. You see what I'm saying? So just by asking that brother that, we found out that his nationality, his bloodline go back to Israel because his dad is a Native American. And the seed come through the father, not the mother. So his dad is a Native American, but his mother is some other European nation. And it don't matter about the mother because the seed don't come through the mother. The seed come through the father. So we know this guy is Israelite. Now, perspective 2. What if he came out and said, I want to know, can I be saved? Because I heard you guys say that salvation was only of the Israelites. We say, well, what's your dad's nationality? He said, well, my dad is Portuguese. You know, my dad is Portuguese. Well, automatically, we know he can't be saved. Because we know the Portuguese goes back to the white man, Edom, the Edomites. Those are the Portuguese. So automatically, we know that this guy, he can't be saved. So that's how you can find out too. But sometimes you can't find out because that individual might not know their father's nationality, where it goes back to. So basically what we do, we can't afford to just handpick. So that's what we do. When we go out and about, we do go therefore and we make disciples of all nations because we ain't got to handpick nobody out because the scripture says in Romans 8:16 that the spirit itself is going to bear witness. You see what I'm saying? With our spirit. So we don't know if that brother Edomite or Israelite or not because most likely his spirit going to bear witness with our spirit. Most likely he not going to kick against the black Messiah. You see what I'm saying? He not going to kick against the black Messiah when we hold this up right here. Let's say when we tell him that the Messiah was a black man. You know what I'm saying? We say, don't you know, according to the Bible, Jesus Christ was a black man. And he say, I agree, brother. I agree. I know that the Jesus Christ of today is false. I know that white image of Jesus is not the real Christ. I know that Christ was a black man. And we teaching this brother, and this brother agreeing on everything we saying. You know what I'm saying? He's not getting upset. He's not getting mad, nothing. Then 9 times out of 10, his spirit is bearing witness with our spirit, and we can know that he's an Israelite by that. You see what I'm saying, guys? But the Bible has always been for the Israelites. You see what I'm saying? The Bible has always been for the Israelites, guys. So I'm just going to close this lesson out. I hope I gave you guys what's necessary. Like I said, the people that Paul taught in the New Testament, they were Israelites, man. You know what I'm saying? They were just Israelites that strayed away from the covenants. I could go into more detail. I can give you a whole lot of more history, book, chapter, and verses behind this. But it's getting late, guys, and I can't keep running my mouth. So anyways, I'm going to show you this last book, chapter, and verse that the pastors try to use as well. They try to go to Romans chapter 9 to prove that the Gentiles in the New Testament are other nations. And I'm going to show you that that's not. So they try to go to Romans 9. I'm going to show you too because we read precept upon precept. So they would go right here to Romans chapter 9 verse 9:24. They say this right here. So your pastor take you here. He say, brother, I'm going to prove to you. The pastor say, well, brother, I'm going to prove to you that salvation is not only of the Israelites, but salvation is also of non-Israelite people. Like the pastor would say, y'all saying salvation is only of the Israelite, but the pastor would say salvation is for everybody. Salvation is for everybody. So he'll take you right here in Romans chapter 9 verse he'll take you in Romans 9:24 and he'll say See, because it says right here, even us whom have called not of the Jews. This is Romans 9:24. The pastor would say salvation is not of the Jews only. Salvation is not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. And see, he'll stop right there. So the pastor, he'll say salvation is not only for you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are the Israelites. And the pastor say salvation is for everybody, not of the Jews only, but everybody. And I'll say, well, pastor, where is that at? He say, right here. Whom he have called not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. So Romans 9:24 says, salvation is not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. Who are those Gentiles in Romans 9:24? Let's find out. In Romans 9:24 it says also of the Gentiles. Let's continue to read. Romans 9:25. As he said also in OC. As he said also in OC. So what is OC? Romans 9:25 says, concerning these Gentiles here, see that? Concerning these Gentiles in Romans 9:24. Romans 9:25 says, concerning those Gentiles, it was talked about in OC. Now, what in the hell is OC? Let's see what OC is. Because it was talked about these same Gentiles in OC. Right? Because it says, as it said in OC. Now, what is OC?
Strong's G 5617, Hosea. Hosea.
So what is OC? Hosea. Greek 5617. Let's click into it and let's see what it is. It says Hosea, which means salvation. Hosea was a Hebrew prophet. So Hosea was a northern kingdom prophet, as it said in OC. So we know what OC means. OC means Hosea. So when we go back to Romans, when we go back to the book of Romans in 9 verse 25, about these Gentiles, it said, because not of the Jews only in Romans 9:24, but also of the Gentiles, Romans 9:25. It says, as it said in OC. So it was recorded in the book of Hosea concerning these Gentiles. Because in the book of OC, which is Hosea, he says, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not my beloved. So who was called not the people of the Lord in the book of Hosea OC? Well, let's see. Hosea 1 and 10. Let's go there. Hosea 1 and 10, and I'll close it out with this. We're going to find out who was not the Lord's people in Hosea 1 and 10. Because it said, as it said in OC. So let's find out. Watch this. He got OC right here, Hosea, as it was said. Hosea 1 and 10 in the New Testament. Yet the number of the children of Israel, shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in that place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people. Who was not the people of the Lord? The children of Israel. Who went out from the covenants? Who strayed away from the covenants? Who started worshiping gods and idols of other nations? Who started calling themselves Greeks? Who started calling themselves Romans? Who started calling themselves Ephesians? Who started calling themselves Colossians? Who started calling themselves Galatians? Who started calling themselves all the epistles that Paul wrote? The children of Israel. This is Hosea 1 and 10. The children of Israel was the ones that was considered not a people. You are not my people. And it says it was just a matter of time when it was going to come to the point of time that it would be said that they were the sons of the living God. You see? You damn right. You damn right they wasn't called the Lord's people because they didn't want to be the Lord's people. They wanted to be Greeks and every other thing, man. So the people that Paul wrote letters to in the New Testament was Israelite foreigners, man. Better yet, known as Gentiles. It's two sets of Gentiles, guys. It's two sets of Gentiles. I'm going to show you this and I'm closing out. Remember, it's two sets of Gentiles. Let me show you. Gentiles, the first set of Gentiles is from 2 to 18. These are biological Gentiles by blood. from 2 to 18 are biological Gentiles. And the second set of Gentiles is Israelites from the nation of Israel. Israelite men and women that went off and started following the customs from 2 to 18, becoming in a Gentile state of mind. You see what I'm saying? So guys, keep in mind that Paul only taught Israelite Gentiles. And the word Gentile goes back to the Latin word gentilis, which means foreigner. Because they asked straight away from the covenants. And he was trying to bring them back to their nationality by writing these letters to the churches in those areas where they were scattered out at. Pretty much, man. So guys, Kamari Asheral, Wanda Smith, Patricia Toombs, KT Thomas, we appreciate you. Because I can give you many more books, chapter. Trust me, guys. I can go another hour with this because, man, look, if you don't believe me, look how much stuff I would have had to cover if I continued to keep talking. Look how much stuff I would have to cover if I continue to keep talking. Look how much stuff I would have to cover. Just this is a long lesson, man. Look how much stuff I would have to cover over if I keep because this is a long breakdown. I can't afford to break it down like this tonight. I will have to come back and make a part 2 or something. But now you know the Gentiles in the New Testament was not white people, which are Edomites, not Africans, which are Hamites, not Japanese, which are Ammonites, not Chinese, which are Moabites, not Elamites, which are East Indians, which are Elamites, not Ishmaelites, which are Arabs. The people in the New Testament that Paul was reaching out to when he was writing letters was the dispersed of the nation of Israel. It was not 2 to 18. It was not these nations. So guys, again, appreciate you for your time. Share the video. It's been another one. It's been good. Shalom.